Hey, this is Joe, and welcome back for another video. I've been doing a brake job and a wheel bearing job on Mark V VW GTI. I purchased this vehicle up in the Pacific Northwest. It rains a lot in the wintertime, a lot of moisture in the air, and a lot of parts that are exposed to the road surfaces get rusted really bad. So the question is do you clean the parts before you put them back on, or do you put them back on without cleaning them? If you take your vehicle to the dealer, they more than likely will not clean the parts. They are good mechanics, but most mechanics working at dealers are paid by a flat rate, meaning if the job requires 1 hour, you get paid for 1 hour. If it takes you 2 hours to do it, you still only get paid for the 1 hour. So a lot of the mechanics nowadays, again, they're under a time crunch, so they take things apart. In the case of a brake job, they take everything apart, put new brake pads on, and then they reassemble it. I take a slightly different approach since I'm doing all this work myself. This particular brake caliper carrier assembly was cleaned, and this one I have not cleaned yet, but as you can see, it's pretty filthy. Now the critical areas that I focus on cleaning are these tracks right here. That is where your brake pads fit in, and then your caliper assembly slides in to this carrier assembly. So if it's dirty and crusty and brake dust has built up and dried, it's going to be really hard to put things back together without forcing it. So I believe in cleaning things up. And just to show you, let me get, when I pulled the bolts out, if you look really closely, I wire brushed this bolt, and near the bottom, near the head of the bolt, you can see that the threads are really bunged up. And this one has not been cleaned yet. And if you notice, look at all the rust. Again, anytime you run a car where there's a lot of moisture, like in the Pacific Northwest, you're going to get this situation. Now, how do you prevent that? You can't eliminate it completely, but if you take and get yourself some anti-seize compound, and during your reassembly, if you put anti-seize compound on all the threads and all the components, and then when you put that back together, the next time you go in and do any maintenance on parts that are exposed to road grime, it's hopefully going to reduce a lot of that rust. Another thing that I do, let me show you here. This is the mounting surface. This is called a spindle, and this is where your bearing hub assembly goes. And again, it took me about 30 minutes to pound out the old bearing because it was just rusted in. So what I do is I get a wire brush, a cup style wire brush, and I go in and very gently wire brush all of that recessed area where the bearing hub assembly sits. And again, right before I put the new bearing in, I'm going to rub some anti-seize compound in there, and hopefully that will prevent things from locking up the next time I go to pull this stuff apart. So again, mechanics in a dealership or any type of a service where they're being paid a flat rate more than likely won't do very much cleaning. But if you do your work yourself, make sure you clean your parts. Use a good anti-seize compound. In the case of these horrible, horrible bolts, always replace the bolts with new bolts. I have bolts on order. These are the carrier bolts for the rear brakes, and the carrier bolts for the front brakes are a bit shorter and a little bit fatter. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.